So, yeah, I was thinking about a man that I knew years ago who was in the mental health system, and I'm going to fill in a few blanks because I don't know all of the details of his situation, but I know that it was along these lines. That he was mentally unwell, and he was accessing various mental health support services in the community. And he was a very quiet, gentle man, very polite, well mannered. And I didn't feel he had a lot of sort of malevolence in him, or rage near the surface or anything like that. Um, yeah, I don't think that he would be a sort of antisocial personality type or anything like that. But his mum became ill, and from what I understand, she was ill, but it wasn't anything serious, and it was just a situation where I think she was just really quite poorly for maybe a number of months, and probably sleeping a lot, and very low in her energies, and didn't really have a lot to give to him. He wasn't able to work, and I don't think he had a strong support. I don't think he had a supportive family system network, and I don't think he had a social support network that was strong. And so I got the impression that his mum was kind of his main source of connection and positive attention and sort of nurture and care, really. He was probably around 40 years old at this point, but for various reasons, I think, he had some elements of his personality development um, that hadn't been able to happen like they do for healthy people. And so he hadn't kind of started to live what we would consider like a full adult life. That's not to infantilize him and speak of him as though he was immature or childlike, but just if the personality development is arrested, halted, or disturbed in some way, often people won't be able to cope with things like running their own home. They might live with their parents into their 50s, 60s, or they might not gain employment and have their own independence financially and things like that. So that's the kind of situation I'm trying to describe. He behaved like an adult, though. I don't want to describe him in a belittling way as though he was very childlike. So yeah, I think that she was probably his sole source of connection and support and things like that. And so when he went through a time where that was unavailable to him, he started to tell people that he was coming into contact with that his mum had been diagnosed with terminal cancer and that she was dying. And it turned out, it came out somehow that that wasn't true, and he hadn't been truthful about that. And a lot of people judged him and said he was a really bad person and what a sick thing to do. He may have even said that she died at one point. I forget because it was many years ago. But that's something that in our society we would generally consider as a really sick thing to do. It would commonly be described as that, and people would generally judge that person harshly, and that it's a mark of like a bad person doing something like that. Um, it's not great, it's not ideal, it's not a healthy, well adjusted way to behave. But what I believe was going on with this person was that, well, actually, I don't know his whole story, right? But I know how people, how that tends to come about, basically, right? The sort of things that need to happen in someone's life to create a lie like that. And often a person like this will have a history of having been belittled and dismissed and minimised whenever they have tried to get positive attention for regular level needs. Okay, so that person, for example, might have experienced emotional neglect in childhood, for example. And so when they approached people with more basic everyday emotional needs, they would be dismissed and sent away. And so that person learned that the only way to get your needs met, the only time that I receive love, someone's undivided attention and care and support, is when something extremely huge happens, something traumatic level happens. I have to say that in the UK, I'm not sure what the situation is currently, for two reasons. Just because this is about 10 years ago now, so mental health services may have massively improved. And also we have the COVID situation going on, and so the current state of mental health services may be under extraordinary strain. So may have improved but don't appear to have improved currently, because there's so many people trying to access support that it appears like that there isn't enough support, but it's just because there's an unprecedented demand for support, if that makes sense. So I don't know what the current situation is, and I don't want to speak on that because I think our NHS is amazing when it's given the resources and the tools to do its job well. I think there are amazing, talented, wonderful people working for the National Health Service in the UK, but they can only do what they can do with the resources they're given. So, and this will have been the case at this point in time that this man did this, I think around 10 years ago. But certainly his experience of mental health support and mental health services, NHS-wise, will have been similar for much of his life. Probably the early examples of him reaching out, unless he was extremely distressed, he wouldn't have gotten a very speedy response. And for someone who's been emotionally neglected, ignored, overlooked, dismissed, and so on, that would be re-traumatizing and very distressing, and that would be enough to stop someone from feeling that they were worth receiving help, potentially ever again, and stop someone from reaching out, because it will have been so unbelievably painful to reach out and trust the service to not be like all the people that had gone before in that person's life, trust the service to give him help and respond as though he mattered. It would have been unbelievably distressing and re-traumatizing to have had a very slow response and kind of eventually be triaged and then be told that he might be able to get some support in 6 months' time or something like that. It really genuinely used to be the case that people used to have to wait really extended periods of time for mental health support like that, sort of 15-20 years ago. So his early experiences of reaching out for the correct type of support in a healthy way could have been really re-traumatizing for him. Therefore, he felt too afraid psychologically and emotionally and spiritually to put himself in that position again, because if the same thing happened again and basically he got the message back from the service and the system that your needs are not particularly urgent and you might see someone in a few months, even though he was extremely distressed, that would be a really traumatizing experience for someone who's only ever experienced neglect and dismissal. And so that person could very easily have learned that the only way to get your needs met is to be in an absolutely intense crisis, or to have very big issues happening that nobody could dismiss or belittle or deny or ignore. And so what people tend to do with emotional backgrounds such as those that I've described is they will take a real truthful situation, and when they describe it to other people, they will, to keep themselves emotionally safe, not to mess with other people's heads or hurt other people's feelings or exploit other people's empathy and sympathy, just to stay psychologically and emotionally safe, considering they're deeply traumatized people. They will describe it as being this massive, so they're worried about a parent who they're quite dependent on, who is just mild to moderately ill. They will turn that into terminal cancer, going to die soon, and may even go as far as telling people that that person has actually passed away. So I'm going to leave it there for that video, but I hope that that's a helpful description of the kind of mechanisms that can be in place to cause someone to behave that way. That it's not a bad person who falsifies stories like that. They're not sick in the head. They're not trying to mess with people's minds. Some people are. There are certain characters in humanity who will do that just for the evil sort of Machiavellian pleasure of it. But the vast majority of cases, someone is doing that just out of a sort of distress signal that they don't know how to send clearly and appropriately, and they're just very desperately in need of positive attention, of being seen, of being heard, of getting the message that they matter and things like that. So yeah, I don't know what title I'm going to give this video, but it's just a bit of an explanation about quite extreme behaviour that might seem a bit sick, can actually just be a deeply traumatised, wounded person who really wouldn't intentionally hurt a fly. Mental health issues are incredibly complex sometimes, and there's often a lot going on under the surface that has led that person to that moment. It doesn't justify behaviour that's distressing to those around them, but I hope I've given a demonstration and an example of a story where you can kind of see what led them there, because the more we understand one another with compassion and empathy, the better we can move forward, and the less that people with these backgrounds will commit these kind of behaviours. This person had probably never learned how to get positive attention any other way, except I have to be extremely distressed in order to be worthy of any attention. How heartbreaking is that? Genuinely, that was a human being who did a very strange and difficult to understand thing, but possibly because of feelings like that. I would hope that everyone can see that that's really tragic. Anyway, thanks for listening. If you've made it this far, a bit longer than I'd hoped the video would be, but yeah, I hope you enjoyed. If you have any comments or questions, please pop them below. Particularly if you enjoyed this video. I don't know if people are interested in this kind of thing, but I just feel at the moment human beings have a massive opportunity to try and understand one another better, and I think that we'll all get along so much better and help heal those in distress better if we just have a deeper level of understanding, and particularly of strange or seemingly antisocial behaviour. Thanks very much. Take care.